Hi there. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the influences on human resource management, more specifically focusing on stakeholders. So, firstly, what are stakeholders? Well, they're essentially anyone that has a common interest in the survival and success of the business. Okay, now, there's for some reason, confusion in terms of getting stakeholders and shareholders confused. Okay, now shareholders are people that own a part of a business, through buying shares. However, stakeholders is anyone at all that has an interest in the survival and success of a business. For example, the environment is a stakeholder in business because the environment has an interest in the survival and success of the business as long as it aims to not destroy the environment. As interest in the business acting in an ethical and corporately social responsible way. Now, the issue is that not all stakeholders' interests are shared, and more often than not, there are conflicts that arise due to those differences and those competing interests. Okay, so let's look at a few of the stakeholders in HR management. So, firstly is employers. Okay, now, employers, they're a stakeholder because the employers and managers, they handle HR issues on a daily basis. Okay? However, roughly in line with legislative changes, their responsibilities have increased. Okay? However, they are stakeholders as they deal with the human resource, which is the employee, on a daily basis. Okay? Employees obviously are a stakeholder in the human resource management business function. Okay, employees today are, on average, a lot more educated, and they become bored with really tedious, monotonous work. So what it leads to is employees building their careers through a range of different organizations. Okay, so they're going to be more willing to chop and change their jobs as opposed to staying with the same company for their entire life. There's been a change in the structure of the workforce as well. So now we've got a lot more casual, a lot more part-time contracts being offered. It's becoming a little bit harder for women, older people, and unskilled, inexperienced people to find a job as well. And also employees' demands have changed. Okay, employees demand different things, such as flexible working hours, daycare facilities, for example. We've got employer associations as a stakeholder in the HR management as well. Now, employer associations they were created originally to counter the union movement. Okay, to counter the trade union movement. So, whereas the trade union movement represents employees, the employer associations represent the employers. Okay, and now what they do is they provide advice on awards, unfair dismissals, discrimination issues for the employers. They make submissions to safety net wage cases. Okay, for employers, they negotiate agreements. And they lobby governments and other organizations with, again, the interest of employers, industries, and trade. Okay, now, they don't just work as employer associations, they also act as professional bodies offering training, courses, forums, and they also operate as marketing bodies as well. Okay, so for example, meat and livestock, dairy, etc. So, counter to the employer associations, we've also got trade unions. Okay, now these were formed by employees in an industry, a trade, or an occupation, and it represents them. It represents the employees for the employees, by the employees, in efforts to improve wages and their working conditions. Okay, now, however, lately union membership has fallen because of this rising casualization. Okay, the issue is that people are casuals. They think, well, if I'm only getting 1 or 2 shifts a week, well, what's the point of me spending a couple of $100, maybe $1,000, becoming a member of my union? What benefit do I even get out of it if I'm only doing a couple of hours a week? So that's one reason why they're falling. Employees are also becoming managers with individual performance-based contracts, so they're no longer really covered by awards or enterprise agreements. So there's no real need for them to fight for better conditions because they've already got better conditions in their new contracts. There's also a poor image of unions and loss of grassroots activities. Okay, so starting from the people, by the people. Now, in order to counter this decline in membership, unions are now expanding to other services. Discounted education, discounted insurance, home loans, training courses, partnerships with medical insurance, etc. Okay, we've also got governments and government organisations acting as a stakeholder. Okay, now the government itself is a stakeholder. It has many key roles. Okay, acts as a legislator. So the government's the basically the stakeholder, the organisation, the institution that actually creates the law that all industrial relations has to follow. They act as an employer. Okay, almost a third of all Australians work in federal or state government roles. They need to be a responsible economic manager as well. There's conflict between managing maintaining a stable economy and ensuring that industrial relations framework benefits everyone. They administer government policies on IR as well. Through its departments, the government is able to implement the legislation it actually creates as well. And it also acts as a representative internationally for Australia. So, based on the treaties, the conventions that Australia signs up to on a global scale, the government must also implement those as well. Now, there are a few things within the government that we can look at here. So, for example, we've got statutes. Now, statutes are laws made by federal and state parliaments. Okay. Now, since January 2010, Australia's moved from having both a federal and a state industrial relations system to just one national industrial relations framework. Okay, and this is implemented under the Fair Work Act of 2009 and administered by Fair Work Australia. Okay, and this includes things, for example, such as the 10 National Employment Standards, or the NES, which provide basic protections, modern awards for specific industries and occupations, protection from unfair dismissal, enterprise bargaining is continued. We've also got industrial tribunals and courts. Okay, so Fair Work Australia settles disputes through conciliation. It supervises the making of agreements and awards, hears appeals, and handles unfair dismissal cases. Okay, we also got a panel of 7 senior members that make up the minimum wage panel. They are responsible for the hearing of annual wage cases, and they set the minimum wage. We've also got federal court. Okay, now, the federal court has judicial power to determine disputes about existing rights and to make decisions on these matters. The federal court also has a division that enforces industrial relations legislation, so breaches of industrial laws. It interprets industrial legislation, imposes penalties for breaches of awards or discrimination. It also has the power to approve the disamalgamation, so the dissolving of unions as an association. And then we've got some other government agencies. Now, there are a number of federal state government agencies involved in HR that need to be sort of consulted or looked at when operating in HR. For example, the Australian Human Rights Commission, the Equal Employment for Women Agency, the Anti-Discrimination Board, and Safe Work Australia. And finally, society. Now, people have expectations that regarding employment conditions such as safety, elimination of discrimination against women and the disabled. People have expectations when they go to work that they're not going to lose an arm, that they're going to go home safely, they're not going to get discriminated against, and if they're a female or if they're disabled, they're going to have just as an equal opportunity to access employment and everything that goes with it as much as the next person. Okay? Now, the rise of globalization has impacted workplaces, puts a strain on society as well. Okay, so if you're moving offshore, it causes community dislocation, unemployment, doing more with less. That mantra leads to cutting costs but it might also lead to people working longer with harsher conditions for fear of losing their job. Okay, they might be doing longer hours for less pay if they have the fear that someone else is knocking at the door ready to take their job, willing to do it for that less pay and those long hours if it means that they get a job. Okay, so that's why society is also involved. Society is also a stakeholder. So I hope this brief video on stakeholders has been useful. The next video will look at the legal influences, so the current legal industrial relations framework. Thank you.